Okay, welcome back, everyone. We've been working our way through the human body systems, and today, well, we're diving into something really intricate, the ear.
That's right. And it's fascinating because it's doing double duty, isn't it? It's not just about hearing.
Exactly. It's this incredibly designed organ that, yes, handles hearing, but also our sense of balance, knowing where our head is, even how we're moving. Quite the package.
It really is. You can think of its core job as taking physical energy like sound waves, or even gravity acting inside your head and channeling it.
And then doing this kind of amazing conversion, right? Turning that physical stuff into electrical signals.
Precisely. Electrical signals the brain can then interpret as either sound or, motion and position.
So, for this deep dive, we're drawing from Mr. Hostler's lecture notes. These are based on Chapter 13 of The Human Body in Health and Illness, the 7th edition by Barbara Hurley.
And these notes really focus on the why behind the structures, which is, well, super important for clinical thinking, not just memorizing parts.
Absolutely. So, our plan is to walk through the ear, starting from the outside, moving structure by structure, all the way in.
We'll see how each piece contributes, and we'll finish by tracing that whole journey, how a sound wave becomes, well, sound in your brain.
Okay, get ready, folks. Let's uncover the incredible engineering packed inside your head. Where should we start?
Let's start with the most obvious bit, the external ear.
Right? The part you can see, that flap on the side of your head.
That's the one, the auricle, or sometimes called the pinna. It's mostly elastic cartilage, which gives it its shape and flexibility.
And its main job is just catching sound.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It acts like a funnel, capturing sound waves and directing them inwards towards the ear canal, like an antenna, sort of.
Okay, so from the auricle, the sound goes into that little tube.
The external auditory canal, it's about an inch long, leading inwards.
And it's not just an empty tube, is it? I remember reading about glands in there.
Correct. It's lined with ceruminous glands. These produce cerumen, what most people just call earwax.
Uh-huh. And earwax isn't just gunk. It actually does something useful.
Oh, absolutely. It's protective. It traps dust, little bits of debris, maybe even an unlucky insect, stopping them from getting deeper into the ear. It's a natural defense.
Got it. So at the end of this canal, we run into a barrier.
Yes, the tympanic membrane. You probably know it as the eardrum. It's this thin, slightly cone-shaped membrane.
And it separates the external canal from the next part, the middle ear.
Exactly. And when those sound waves funnel down the canal, hit the tympanic membrane.
It vibrates, like a drum skin.
Precisely. This is the first big step, converting those air pressure waves into actual physical movement.
And clinically, there's something about how it should look.
Right. When a doctor looks with an otoscope, a healthy eardrum should appear sort of pearly gray and a bit translucent. Knowing that helps spot problems.
And things like middle ear infections, otitis media, where do they happen relative to the eardrum?
They happen behind it, in that space called the middle ear, which, conveniently, is where we're headed next.
Perfect transition. Okay, so behind this vibrating eardrum is the middle ear cavity. It's filled with air, right?
Air-filled, yes.
Yeah.
And it houses three of the tiniest, most interesting bones in the body.
Ah, the auditory ossicles. I remember those names. Malleus, incisius, and stapes.
You got it. The malleus, incisius, and stapes. Hammer, anvil, and stirrup are their common names. They form a little chain.
Okay, walk us through that chain. How do they connect? What's their job?
Well, the malleus, the hammer, is attached right to the inside of the tympanic membrane. So when the eardrum vibrates, the malleus moves with it.
First in line.
Then the malleus transfers that movement to the incus, the anvil, which is kind of the bridge bone in the middle.
Okay.
And the incus, in turn, connects to the stapes, the stirrup. The base of the stapes, its footplate, fits neatly into a little membrane-covered opening called the oval window.
And the oval window leads into the inner ear.
Correct. So the vibration goes eardrum malleus incisius oval window. It's a mechanical relay system.
But it's not just passing the vibration along, is it? There's something about amplification. The notes had an analogy.
Yes, the bass drum and foot pedal analogy. Think of the eardrum, like the large surface of the drum skin. It collects the sound energy over a wide area.
Okay.
The ossicles then act like the pedal mechanism, concentrating all that collected force onto the much, much smaller area of the stapes footplate pressing on the oval window.
Ah, I see. So it increases the pressure. Why is that boost needed?
Because you're going from air in the middle ear to fluid in the inner ear. Fluid is much denser, much harder to move than air.
Right. Takes more oomph.
Exactly. So this amplification by the ossicles is crucial for efficiently transferring the sound energy into that inner ear fluid. Without it, most of the sound would just bounce off. It matches the impedance.
That's clever engineering with just 3 tiny bones. Amazing. What else is in this middle ear space?
Something vital. The eustachian tube, also called the auditory tube. It's a tube that connects the middle ear cavity down to the nasopharynx, the upper part of your throat, behind your nose.
Ah, okay. Is this the thing responsible for ears popping, like on an airplane?
That's the one. Its main job is pressure equalization. It makes sure the air pressure inside your middle ear is the same as the air pressure outside your body.
So when the outside pressure changes quickly, like going up or down in a plane, this tube opens up.
Briefly, yes. It lets air flow in or out to balance the pressure on both sides of the eardrum. That's the pop you feel.
Okay, but why is keeping that pressure equal so important for hearing itself? What goes wrong if it's unequal?
Great question. Because if the pressure isn't equal, the eardrum gets pushed inward or pulled outward.
Like it gets stretched tight or sucked in.
Exactly. Imagine the pressure outside is higher, like when you're descending. It pushes the eardrum inward.
Mm.
If the middle ear pressure is higher, it bulges outward.
And an eardrum that's distorted like that,
Yeah,
it can't vibrate properly.
precisely. It's too tense or retracted. It just can't move freely the way it needs to when sound waves hit it.
So the vibration doesn't get transmitted well to the ossicles.
Right. It dampens the whole process right at the start. That's why your hearing feels muffled or off when your ears need to pop but haven't yet. It directly affects the mechanics.
Wow, okay, that makes perfect sense. It's not just discomfort, it's physically hindering the hearing process. Right, so we've covered external and middle. Let's go deeper into the inner ear.
Okay, the inner ear.
Yeah.
This is really tucked away deep inside the temporal bone of the skull. It's complex structurally. It's often described as a bony labyrinth.
A maze.
Kind of. Fluid-filled chambers within the bone. And inside that bony labyrinth floats a membranous labyrinth. That's where the actual sensory receptors are.
And this is where the real conversion happens. Physical energy finally becomes electrical signals.
Yes, for both hearing and balance. This is the site of transduction. There are 3 main structures within the inner ear handling these jobs.
Let's tackle hearing first, since we followed the sound waves this far.
Okay, for hearing, the key structure is the cochlea.
Cochlea means snail shell, right? Because of the shape.
Exactly. It's this coiled spiral structure. Looks just like one.
Yeah. And inside that coil, it's divided up.
Yes, into 3 main fluid-filled channels that run along its length. You have the scala vestibuli at the top, the scala tympani at the bottom, and sandwiched between them is the cochlear duct.
Okay, scala vestibuli and scala tympani. What kind of fluid is in there?
That's perilymph. It's chemically quite similar to the fluid around your brain and spinal cord.
And its job.
Well, the scala vestibuli is where the pressure waves from the stapes pushing on the oval window first enter the cochlea. So the perilymph transmits those waves along the length of the cochlea. It also provides some cushioning.
But the middle one, the cochlear duct, has different fluid.
Yes, that contains endolymph. And endolymph is biochemically special. It's very rich in potassium ions, much higher potassium than the perilymph or the cells around it.
And why does that matter? High potassium.
It's absolutely critical for how the hearing receptor cells work. This difference in ion concentration creates an electrochemical gradient, the electrical potential difference that powers the whole transduction process.
Got it. Okay, so where are these receptor cells, the ones that actually detect the sound vibrations?
They sit on the floor of that cochlear duct on a membrane called the basilar membrane. The whole structure there, the basilar membrane plus the receptor cells on top, is called the organ of Corti.
The organ of Corti, that's the actual hearing organ then.
That's it. And the receptor cells themselves are called hair cells.
Hair cells. Because they have little hairs.
They do. Tiny projections called cilia sticking out from their top surface. These cilia reach up towards another membrane that overhangs them, called the tectorial membrane.
Okay, let's connect this. Stapes makes waves in the perilymph. The waves travel through the cochlea. What happens to the basilar membrane and these hair cells?
Those pressure waves in the perilymph cause the basal membrane to vibrate, to move up and down.
Right.
And because the hair cells are sitting on that moving basilar membrane, their cilia get bent or sheared against the relatively stationary tectorial membrane above them.
Ah, the bending of the hairs, this is the key moment.
This is the key moment for hearing. That physical bending mechanically opens up ion channels in the hair cell membrane.
And because of that high potassium endolymph.
Exactly. Potassium ions rush into the hair cell, changing its electrical state and triggering the release of neurotransmitters, which generates an electrical signal, a nerve impulse.
So physical bending turns into an electrical signal. What's that called again?
Mechanotransduction, taking mechanical force, the bending, and transducing or converting it into an electrical signal the nervous system uses.
Wow. Okay, so these electrical signals are generated. Where do they go next?
They're picked up by the nerve fibers of the cochlear branch of the vestibulocochlear nerve. That's cranial nerve number 8.
CN8. And it carries that signal up to the brain.
Yes, it travels to the auditory cortex, which is located in the temporal lobe of your brain. And it's there, in the cortex, that these patterns of electrical impulses are interpreted as what we perceive as sound music, speech, noise, everything.
That is just an incredible chain reaction. Air waves, eardrum, bones, fluid waves, bending hairs, electrical signals, brain interpretation. Amazing.
It truly is. But remember, the inner ear isn't finished yet. It's also handling balance.
Right, the other major function. Where does that happen?
Primarily in 2 other structures right next to the cochlea, the vestibule and the semicircular canals. Let's start with the vestibule. It's sort of a central chamber.
Okay, the vestibule. What kind of balance information does it give us?
The vestibule is mainly responsible for static equilibrium.
Static equilibrium, meaning like knowing which way is up when you're still or tilting your head slowly.
Exactly that. Your head's position relative to gravity when you're not making sudden dynamic movements. Inside the vestibule, there are more of these amazing hair cells.
More hair cells.
Yes. But here, their cilia are embedded in a gelatinous, kind of jelly-like membrane. And sitting on top of that gel are tiny, dense crystals made of calcium carbonate.
Ah, these are the otoliths, the little ear stones.
Those are the ones, otoliths. Because they're dense calcium crystals, gravity pulls on them.
Okay, so how does that help sense position?
When you tilt your head, or even just accelerate linearly, like in a car, gravity, or inertia, pulls on these heavy otoliths. That pull causes the gelatinous layer they're sitting on to sag or shift.
And that shifting gel bends the hair cells underneath.
You got it. It bends the cilia of the hair cells embedded in it. And just like in the cochlea.
Mechanotransduction again. Bending creates an electrical signal.
Precisely. Those signals are sent via the vestibular branch of cranial nerve 8 to the brainstem and the cerebellum. This system constantly tells your brain about your head's orientation. Is it upright, tilted forward, sideways, allowing you to maintain posture and balance without conscious thought, especially during subtle shifts.
Okay, so vestibule static balance using gravity and otoliths. What about when you're moving more dynamically, spinning, turning your head quickly?
That's where the semicircular canals come in. There are 3 of them, and they're oriented in 3 different planes, roughly right angles to each other, like the corner of a room.
So they can detect rotation in any direction, up, down, side to side, tilting.
Exactly. They're set up to sense rotational or angular acceleration. They handle dynamic equilibrium balance during movement.
Okay, how do they work? More hair cells.
Yes, but arranged differently. Each canal has a swelling at its base called the ampulla. Inside the ampulla, there's a patch of hair cells whose cilia are embedded in a gelatinous dome-shaped structure called the cupula. It acts kind of like a swinging door.
A swinging door. Okay, so when you turn your head.
When you rotate your head, say turning to the left, the bony canal and the cupula move immediately. But the fluid inside the canal, the endolymph, lags behind slightly due to inertia. It hasn't caught up yet.
Like water sloshing in a moving bucket.
A bit like that, yes. This lagging fluid pushes against the cupula, the swinging door.
And pushing the cupula
Bends the cilia of the hair cells embedded in it, which again triggers mechanotransduction, generating nerve signals.
And these signals also go via the vestibular nerve?
Yes, same nerve pathway, vestibular branch of CNAs to the brainstem and cerebellum. This input is crucial for coordinating balance reflexes during movement, like adjusting your posture or keeping your eyes focused on a target, even while your head is turning.
So, quick recap. Vestibule uses otoliths and gravity for static position sense. Semicircular canals use fluid inertia and the cupula for dynamic rotational sense. But both fundamentally rely on bending hair cells.
That's the core principle.
Yeah.
Elegantly adapted for different types of motion detection. It's really quite remarkable.
It really is. Okay, that's a lot to take in, but seeing how the structures relate to function helps. Can we quickly walk through that hearing pathway one more time just to cement it?
Absolutely. Let's trace a sound wave.
Right.
First, it enters the auricle, gets funneled into the external auditory canal.
Okay.
Second, it hits the tympanic membrane, making it vibrate.
Got it.
Third, that vibration gets passed along and amplified by the ossicles, malleus, then insacus, then stapes.
The bone chain.
Fourth, the stapes pushes on the oval window membrane, creating pressure waves in the perilymph fluid inside the scala vestibuli of the cochlea.
Waves in the fluid.
Fifth, these fluid waves travel through the cochlea and cause the basilar membrane to vibrate at specific locations depending on the sound frequency.
Okay.
Sixth, this vibration of the basilar membrane bends the cilia of the hair cells in the organ of Corti against the tectorial membrane. Mechanotransduction happens.
The magic conversion.
Seventh, the resulting electrical signals are picked up by the cochlear nerve, travel as part of C&D, and head up to the auditory cortex in the temporal lobe.
Where the brain finally says, aha, that's sound.
Exactly. That's the journey from physical wave to conscious perception, and all happening right next door to the balance system using similar components.
It really highlights how integrated it all is. Okay, let's try applying this. Mr. Hostler's notes emphasize clinical thinking. Let's use that scenario presented.
Sounds good. Hit me with it.
Okay, imagine a patient complains of muffled hearing and a feeling of fullness or pressure in one ear. This started after they took a flight. You look inside with an otoscope, and you notice the tympanic membrane looks retracted, kind of sucked inward. Based on everything we've just discussed, what structure is likely causing the problem, and how?
Okay. Muffled hearing. Pressure after a flight. Retracted eardrum. That pattern points pretty strongly towards the eustachian tube.
Exactly. So why? How does eustachian tube dysfunction lead to those symptoms?
Well, its job is to equalize pressure. If it's not opening properly, maybe because of congestion from the flight or a cold, then the pressure in the middle ear doesn't match the outside pressure.
Right. And after landing, the outside pressure is usually higher than the pressure trapped in the middle ear.
Which means the higher outside pressure pushes the tympanic membrane inward, causing that retraction we see. And maybe the feeling of pressure or fullness.
And the muffled hearing.
That comes back to what we said earlier. A retracted, tense eardrum can't vibrate freely when sound waves hit it.
It's dampened.
Exactly. So the vibrations aren't transmitted effectively through the ossicles to the inner ear. Less sound energy gets through.
Resulting in muffled hearing. Perfect. That really ties the structure of the eustachian tube to its function, pressure equalization, and explains the clinical signs.
It's a great example of why understanding the anatomy and physiology is so crucial for figuring out what's going wrong.
This whole deep dive just really drives home how incredibly complex and, well, elegant the ear is, handling both hearing and balance with such precision.
It really does. Capturing physical energy, amplifying it, converting it into electrical signals. It's managing multiple streams of information about our world simultaneously.
And that fundamental reliance on the mechanical bending of tiny hair cells for detecting both sound vibrations and the pull of gravity or the slosh of fluid, that's just astounding. It's like the body found this one incredibly sensitive mechanism and adapted it perfectly for different jobs.
It's a beautiful example of biological efficiency and engineering.
It definitely makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How much of our basic perception of reality, our sense of being upright and aware of sounds around us, hinges on these microscopic mechanical events happening constantly inside our heads. It's not just hearing or balance, it's how we construct our physical world.
Absolutely. A truly intricate and vital piece of our anatomy.